All right, so now we're going to start to get into contacts and dealing with those. Now, first thing we need to do is create a model just like we did with user. So let's create contact.js. And what I'm going to do here is just copy everything from our user model and put that in contact. And let's change this to contact schema. And we're going to have a name. I just want to put a field up here because we need to create a relationship between contacts and users because each user has their own set of contacts. It's not like every user that logs in just has this single list of contacts. They all have their, each individual set. So we're going to say that user is going to be part of this schema. And as for the type is actually going to be mongoose.schema.types.objectID. If you remember, when we create an entry with MongoDB, the document has what's called an object ID. So we're saying that's the type that this is. Now we have to refer to a specific collection that we're talking about, and that's going to be users. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, down here, we're going to have a name, an email. Email does not have to be unique, however, because this is not for, logging in or whatever. This is just contacts being stored. We'll also have a phone for each contact, and I'm not going to make that required, so we can get rid of that. And then we're also going to have a type. So we'll say type. And that type will have a type of string, and I'm going to give this a default of personal because the type is either going to be personal or professional. Okay, and then date, we're going to just do the same thing, the default date. And then down here, let's just change this to contact and change this to contact schema. And we should be all set for our model, so we'll save that. Okay, so now let's jump into routes contacts.js. And we're going to work on the first route, which is to get contacts, all a specific user's contacts, which no users have any contacts, so we only have one user, but it should at least get an empty array. So there's a few things we need to bring in. One is going to be the validation checker. So let's actually copy from our users route up at the top here. Let's bring in the check here. We're also going to bring in the user model. So I'm going to copy these two things and bring them into, where were we? Let me close this stuff up, into our contacts.js routes. All right, another thing we need is our auth middleware, so we'll bring that in. Whenever we need to protect routes, we need to use this middleware. Okay, and then I also want to bring in the contact model, so I'll copy this down and let's say contact. Okay, if I can spell it. So now we have both models brought in. Now, this route here to get all contacts, we're going to need this to be a protected route or a private route. So what we'll do is we'll add a second parameter of auth, which will make it protected. Now, we need to pull from our database, so we're going to do a try catch here because we're dealing with Mongoose. And inside the try, let's say const contacts, and set that equal to await, since this returns a promise, contact.find. So find, we can find by anything. Now remember, contacts have a user field, which is an object ID, and we want to get the contacts for this specific user. And since we're using the auth middleware, we have access to that request.user object. So let's say where the user matches request.user.id, which is the object ID. And then I'm just going to sort by date. So we can say sort, and we can pass in an object with date, and I'm going to do -1, which will make it the most recent contacts first. Okay, so now we have that contacts object, or I should say array, and now what we want to do is return it, or we'll just say res.json and contacts. If there's an error here, we'll just do our console error, the message, and res.status 500, and we'll go ahead and just send server error, and that's it. So let's save this. Let's see, we get an error here. Await is only valid. Oh, I forgot to mark this async. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's go to Postman and let's make a GET request to HTTP localhost 5000/API/contacts. Now, if I just try it like this, I get no token, right? Because this is a protected route. So let's go to login user, and I'm just going to log in. You can see in the body I have my John Doe user, and I'm going to copy this token here, and I'm going to add to the headers x-auth-token, paste that in there, and let's send, and you see we get an empty array because we don't have any contacts. So let's save this request as get all users contacts, and I'm actually going to create a new folder. I don't want to put it in users and auth. Let's go right here, create folder, and let's say contacts. Okay, so now we have that saved. So in the next video, what I want to do is make it so that we can actually add contacts for a specific user.